Upon a grassy mound in Minneapolis' famed Sculpture Garden, hundreds of protesters surrounded a large wooden structure being erected. Signs reading "Not Your Story" and "Our Tragedy is Not Your Art" have been zip-tied to the surrounding fences. A rift between the community and the institutions meant to represent them had formed. They paid a white man $75,000 to replicate a weapon of genocide, reads one of the signs. The genocide in question is the systematic removal and killing of indigenous people in North America, more specifically the execution of 38 Dakota Sioux men at the hands of the United States government in Mankato, Minnesota on the 26th of December, 1862, the largest mass execution in United States history. Killing that many people at once was a monumental task, requiring a twisted marvel of engineering. Deadly gallows lined with nooses connected by one singular rope, engineered just so one chop of an axe released every platform each Dakota man stood upon, simultaneously killing all 38 of them. The killing machine was constructed with an audience in mind, being placed at the town square, and though a county library and a Holiday Inn occupy what once was the site of that horrid spectacle, the Dakota people have not forgotten. So when Los Angeles artist Sam Durant was set to bring his sculptural work Scaffold to the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden, less than 100 miles from the Mankato massacre, people were up in arms. Scaffold had been exhibited in Europe 3 separate times before arriving in Minneapolis, without any public pushback or controversy. In fact, it was created as a critique of the death penalty, directly in opposition to the horrors of December 26th. Scaffold is a synthesis of 7 different gallows from historical United States-sanctioned executions throughout history, including the one built to kill the Dakota men. Thousands of miles away from the atrocities it depicts, the work was celebrated along with the artist. But when the Walker and Sam Durant decided to bring it to Minneapolis, built upon the sacred land of the Dakota people, what the community saw was not a poignant critique, but a reminder of what their people had been through at the hands of a white man, created by a white man. Clearly a line had been crossed, both by the institution and the artist. The Walker and Sam Durant clearly did not mean to unearth this painful memory, but from their mistakes they clearly illustrated a 3-step process to decolonizing the arts community. Principally, the artist and institution must create a clear dialogue with all affected parties, allowing those wronged to elucidate their grievances without feeling like they are yelling at a brick wall. Secondly, the artist and institution must understand that they are the more powerful party in the situation, and they can dictate the outcome, but not without consequences. And finally, atone for all damages and ensure that it will not happen again. Setting up a dialogue like the one the Walker did is not nearly as easy as one might assume. They took many measures to ensure that all 3 parties had agency, using an experienced moderator who specializes in trauma and Native American issues. The dialogue was held in a ceremonial circle so that the elders present felt comfortable discussing the topic, and ultimately Sam Durant left the fate of the sculpture in the Dakota elders' hands. By the end of the dialogue, all parties had agreed to remove Scaffold from the Sculpture Garden. Sam Durant knew his original message of critiquing capital punishment and the death penalty had been entirely overshadowed by the pain of the massacre, so he handed over the intellectual property of Scaffold and its physical materials to the Dakota people. Despite giving up the ideas and the physical sculpture representing them, Sam Durant does not feel censored. He says he had complete agency in the dialogue, but chose to atone for the damages caused and wanted to show the Dakota people he will not continue to represent the tragedy in his work. There are a plethora of white male artists who have continued to make their name with politically active, provocative, and anti-racist art pieces, making their living off of telling someone else's story. While promoting these anti-racist positions is clearly a net benefit for society, artists of privilege must tread lightly in how they approach these subjects. Following Scaffold's lead, artists and institutions can learn where being an ally goes from spreading their story to telling it for them. After creating a neutral dialogue between parties, the acknowledgement of privilege, and finalizing the necessary steps to rectify all damages, the tensions between the Walker, Sam Durant, and the Dakota people is resolved. But that does not mean every situation is handled with the care and awareness that Scaffold was. Many artists and institutions around the world overstep their bounds and violate their community's trust. Rarely do these effects align with the artist's intent, and by following the roadmap of Scaffold, harmony can be restored to the affected communities. Sam Durant says he will continue to make politically active and anti-racist work. According to him, Scaffold made me much more aware of how I will represent issues in my work. I don't feel that I can't take up any subject that I want to. The question is, how do I do it?